Paul Cayard is a phenomenal sailor and force in our sport.
Paul is, extraordinarily well-rounded, from sailing 505s to starboats to, Volvo Ocean Racers to America's Cups.
He was on the Olympic team that I was fortunate to be the team leader of in 2004 in Athens. It was telling during the opening ceremonies to see how many athletes in the arena were coming up to get his autograph. Not from sailors, but non-sailors. Something that doesn't happen that much in the United States. But in other parts of the world, his name and his face were so recognizable that everybody wanted to be around him, just like most of the US athletes wanted to go and have their pictures with the dream team.
I think what really gave me an advantage over my competitors is that I competed at the top level of all three disciplines in our sport, the America's Cup, the Olympic Games, and round the world racing. Things that I learned in each one of those were applicable to other aspects of the sport, and if I had to give someone advice, a young person, I would say stay flexible, sail a lot of different boats, and crew for the best people you can crew for, because that's the path to learning.
Paul Cayard is definitely one of the legends in our sport. We are so fortunate that he's channeled his passion into our U.S. sailing team. He knows what it takes to build a winning team, and he's giving back to U.S. sailing in a tremendous way as a leader of our team. And, he's in it for the long haul.
He has developed a sense of understanding of the sport and brought it to the world. And the fact that he has decided to take the challenge up to help strengthen and continue the development of our Olympic program in sailing in the U.S. and in U.S. sailing is such a great gift. And we're very fortunate to have him, and I'm very fortunate to have him as a friend.
Legendary status is achieved in any sport more or less the same way. It's results, sometimes tenure, and just being very inspiring, I think, to all involved.
Timmy Lahr is a legend in our sport with all the contributions she made in education and sailing, but also for the fact that, she's a tremendous competitor in her own right.
Timmy is probably the person who would be least likely to call herself a legend. I once interviewed her for an article and asked her what she was proud of, and her answer to me was that she didn't use the word proud. That was not in her vocabulary.
What makes a sailor legendary? Well, first, I think longevity. Timmy Lahr has been around for decades, both as a competitor and a naval architect and a volunteer. You have to perform at the highest levels of the sport, which she has done. She's won national award after national award for her sailing prowess. It helps to have the top training award in U.S. sailing named after you, the Timothy Lahr Trophy for extraordinary service to the safety and education of sailors.
For me, in what I have been able to achieve in my lifetime in sailing, Timmy has always been that inspiration.
Timmy Lahr is a phenomenal sailor and was well recognized as a competitor long before she became an administrator in the sport.
She sailed as a young girl on Long Island Sound with her family and her sister, and she ended up going to the University of Michigan. Michigan has always had a great sailing team, but Timmy went there to get a degree in naval architecture.
She is a naval architect, one of the first women trained at the University of Michigan.
When she came back to Long Island Sound, she got really involved with some of the other larger boat fleets. They were all helmed by male skippers back in that time frame, and it was the most competitive fleet on Long Island Sound, and Timmy was the only woman that was helming, driving a boat in that really super competitive fleet. And then after she married, she got involved with the New Etchells class, where she won national championships 2 years in a row in 1969 and 1970 as the helmswoman, and went on to win 2 North American championships in that class as well. She was always in the thick of it, never really pigeonholing herself in a lot of women's only type events. But on that side, she was a 3-time Adams Cup champion, which represented the best of women across the United States. Those events really did mark the best of the best in women's sailing across the country.
It seems odd that somebody who wants to be a champion is also far more comfortable behind the scenes. She does these things in order to test herself, I think.
Timmy doesn't like to talk about herself, and a lot of people don't realize how much effort and work Timmy put into the U.S. Sailing training and education programs.
She's gone on to be a very good and well-respected judge, but probably the single biggest gift she's given sailing in many years has been helping to develop and lead the development of sail training in the United States, developing a pedagogy that has resulted in U.S. sailing being one of the best places to learn to sail in the world.
I consider everyone who came before me who achieved a dream a legend.
Captain Donald Lawson, he is an interesting character for sure.
When I first started sailing at 9 years old, my first captain told me I could sail around the world. And so my eyes lit up. I felt free. I felt the opportunity to be all I could be in sailing. I grew up watching guys like Steve Fawcett and Gary Jobson and those guys and Bruce Schwab out there doing historical things. And for me to be included with their names down the road, I have to be able to do what they did and do it better.
He is a driven man, and I cannot see him not having success at some of these records that he is shooting for.
Historically, there have been 2 African Americans who have sailed solo around the world. The first was Captain Teddy Seymour in 1987, I think it was, and he went around the world through the canals. And then Captain Bill Pinkney, I think in 89, 91, 92, he went around the world via the Capes. So the way I look at it is we're constantly building on each other's backs of achievement. So Teddy went around the world through the canals. Bill Pinkney went around via the Capes. Now I'm going around nonstop, and that's kind of how we're building it up. I would look at Captain Bill as a legend. I look at Teddy Seymour as a legend. Josh Slocum, a legend. Dodge Morgan, Mike Plant, Bruce Schwab, Rich Wilson, Brad Van Loo. All these guys are people who came before me who did what I am trying to do. And so when we look at the achievements of these individuals, the best way to honor them is try to duplicate or improve on what they've already done.